Hey everyone, and welcome to The Deep Dive. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and follow our channel if you're enjoying these deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics. Today we'll be taking a look at a true giant of Russian literature, Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, and we're going to be doing it with your help. You know, you said in all those excerpts, those key passages that you found most interesting, even some background on Dostoevsky the man himself. So I think it'll be fun to dive right in and see what we can uncover together.
Yeah, I think this is a great approach. It lets us, explore not only the story itself, but also all the life experiences that might have, shaped Dostoevsky's writing. For example, we have an excerpt here that actually mentions his mock execution and the years he spent in Siberian prison camps.
Wow. That's pretty heavy stuff. I mean, to stare death in the face like that, it's no wonder his work is so intensely focused on suffering and punishment.
Exactly right. But what I think is even more interesting than that is how Dostoevsky goes beyond, just depicting suffering. He actually explores the possibility of redemption, like the idea that even after you commit some terrible acts, there's a chance for change. And this wasn't just theoretical for him, it was something that he grappled with personally.
Okay, so we've got this really intense backdrop of Dostoevsky's own experiences. Now let's meet the main character, Raskolnikov. Now this guy's a poor student in St. Petersburg, struggling with poverty and some pretty radical ideas.
Yeah, and it's these ideas that really set the stage for the whole drama. We actually have an excerpt right here where Raskolnikov is climbing the stairs to the pawnbroker's apartment. He reaches the 4th floor, and there's this empty apartment just sitting right there.
It's almost like fate is giving him an open door or something like that.
Precisely. And that's when you really start to see Raskolnikov's internal struggle. He's already trying to justify his actions, trying to convince himself that committing this crime is somehow okay.
This leads us to the pawnbroker herself. And actually, we have an excerpt detailing Raskolnikov's visit to her apartment. He pawns a watch, and the whole scene is just so dripping with tension. You can almost feel that something terrible is about to happen.
And then right after this very unsettling encounter, he bumps into Marmeladov, this destitute alcoholic character who really embodies the suffering of the underclass. And what's so striking is the empathy with which Dostoevsky portrays him.
Yeah. It's like Dostoevsky is really shining a light on those who are so often ignored by society. You know, he's giving them a voice through his writing. And it's through Marmeladov that we also meet his daughter, Sonia.
Ah, Sonia. Her situation, the sacrifice that she makes, it's truly at the heart of the novel's moral complexities. We have an excerpt here where Marmeladov describes how Sonia has turned to prostitution to support her family. And he talks about her lack of opportunities, the desperation of their circumstances.
It just breaks your heart. But then, it makes you think, how can someone in such just a dire situation still hold on to such a strong sense of morality?
And that's the brilliance of Dostoevsky. He forces us to question our own definitions of good and evil. He presents us with characters like Sonia who, despite their circumstances, still maintain this incredibly strong moral compass. It challenges us to look beyond simple judgments and really grapple with the nuances of human nature.
So the tension's been building this whole time, and then, bam, Raskolnikov commits the crime, he murders the pawnbroker.
Right.
And the excerpts that you all sent in paint such a chilling picture. The axe, the blood, the desperate attempts to hide all the stolen items.
Yeah, but the murder itself is just the beginning. What follows is equally gripping. Raskolnikov's just complete psychological unraveling. He's consumed by paranoia, delirium, desperately trying to cover his tracks, even from himself.
It's like his guilt is manifesting itself both physically and mentally. We have an excerpt here where he can't even bring himself to just ask a simple question to a workman. He's that paralyzed by guilt.
Exactly. He's caught in this web of his own making, a web of both internal and external conflict. On the one hand, his conscience is tormenting him. But on the other hand, there's the investigator, Porfiry Petrovich, who is slowly closing in on him.
Okay, so we've got this classic cat-and-mouse game between the criminal and the detective. But it's so much more than just a thriller, right?
Oh, absolutely. Dostoevsky takes us on this deep dive into the very nature of guilt and punishment. He makes us confront these really uncomfortable questions. What does it mean to truly suffer for your actions? And can someone like Raskolnikov ever find redemption after committing such a horrific act? And, it's not just about Raskolnikov's individual journey. Dostoevsky also weaves in these incredibly rich supporting characters that add even more layers to the whole story. Like, we have Dunya, Raskolnikov's sister. She's such a strong and independent woman.
Oh, and then there's Razumin, his fiercely loyal friend, always there to offer support.
Right. And then let's not forget Svidrigailov. No, Talk about a morally ambiguous character. I mean, he represents a path that Raskolnikov could have taken, much darker, more cynical one.
Remember that excerpt where Dini actually confronts Svidrigailov and she even shoots at him? I mean, that scene it really highlights the tension between them and the choices that Raskolnikov himself is facing.
Oh, absolutely.
Whew, intense stuff. But it's not just about, plot twists. Each of these characters really embodies different aspects of Dostoevsky's, larger themes. They're not just there for the ride. They actually force us to think about different perspectives on morality, on society, and on the choices that we make.
Absolutely. And what I find fascinating is how Dostoevsky delves into the psychology of each of these characters, especially Raskolnikov. We see his justifications for the murder, his shifting morals, his descent into madness. It's all laid bare in these excerpts you've shared.
It's like he's holding up a mirror to the human condition, showing us that dark potential that I think lurks within us all. And what really gets me is how Dostoevsky explores this idea that crime itself could actually be a symptom of some deeper illness.
Right. He was so far ahead of his time in terms of really delving into the criminal mind. He wasn't just interested in the act itself, but also all the psychological and societal factors that could actually lead someone to that point.
So it's not just this simple, good versus evil, but the complexities of human nature. And we see this in Raskolnikov's internal turmoil, right? He's constantly questioning himself. Am I a louse or am I an extraordinary man?
Yeah, that internal struggle is what makes him so compelling. Even though his actions are so reprehensible, we can't help but be drawn into his moral dilemma. He really becomes this reflection of those darker impulses that we try to suppress or deny within ourselves.
And then we have this epic showdown between Raskolnikov and Porfiry Petrovich, the investigator. It's a psychological duel, a battle of wits between these two brilliant minds.
And Porfiry is such a unique character. He's not your typical detective, you know. He's so intuitive, almost philosophical in his approach. It's as if he's trying to understand Raskolnikov's soul, not just get a confession out of him.
Yeah, he's like, let's have some tea and dissect your psyche. There's this excerpt where Porfiry talks about ordinary versus extraordinary men. It's echoing Raskolnikov's own, twisted theory about the right to commit a crime. Chills.
It's chilling because it shows how deeply Porfiry understands Raskolnikov's motivations. He sees right through his facade, and this psychological pressure it really takes its toll on Raskolnikov.
Yeah, he's totally unraveling, obsessing over these tiny little details, convinced that he's left some trace of evidence behind. There's this excerpt where he goes back to the pawnbroker's apartment that's being renovated. He's totally fixated on the new wallpaper.
It's a seemingly insignificant detail, but it really speaks volumes about his fractured mental state at this point. He's desperately grasping for control in this world that's just totally spinning out of his grasp.
And this loss of control it's mirrored in the chaos that surrounds him. Like that scene with Katerina Ivanovna, Marmeladov's widow, and her children. It's heartbreaking. Her descent into madness, her death in the street. It's all a reflection of this societal decay that Dostoevsky's portraying.
It's such a powerful indictment of the social injustices of the time. But, amidst all this darkness, there's Sonia, this beacon of hope. She embodies compassion, forgiveness, and this unshakable belief in redemption.
She just urges Raskolnikov to confess.
Yeah.
To seek forgiveness and to accept his punishment. That scene where she reads to him from the Bible, the story of Lazarus rising from the dead.
It's such a powerful moment of spiritual connection. And it's through Sonia that Raskolnikov really starts to confront his guilt and sees this glimmer of hope for his own redemption.
But it's a long and winding road, right?
Yeah.
He wrestles with his pride, with his shame, with his fear of judgment. He even tries to justify his actions, clinging to this theory about extraordinary men.
Yeah, he's so torn between his intellectual arrogance and the weight of his conscience. And it's this inner battle that really showcases Dostoevsky's brilliance in portraying this complexity of human psychology.
It's the age-old struggle between reason and emotion, the desire for power versus the need for redemption. And this battle isn't just happening within Raskolnikov, it's happening within all of us.
And that brings us to the final confrontation between Raskolnikov and Porfiry Petrovich. Porfiry has him cornered. He knows Raskolnikov is the murderer, but he doesn't just want a confession. He wants Raskolnikov to truly understand the nature of his crime and the possibility of redemption.
Oh, the tension in that final encounter is just palpable. Porfiry's playing these mind games, just pushing Raskolnikov to the edge. But he's also offering him a way out, a chance to confess and begin this long road to redemption.
And what's interesting is that even while he's condemning Raskolnikov's actions, Porfiry acknowledges his intelligence, his potential. He sees the tragedy of his fall, but still believes that there's hope for him.
Right. He tells Raskolnikov, suffering, Rodion Romanovich, is a great thing. That line is pure Dostoevsky. This idea that suffering can be transformative, that can actually lead to humility, compassion, and ultimately redemption.
And that's really where Raskolnikov's true journey begins. Through accepting his punishment, 8 years of hard labor in Siberia, he finally starts to actually confront his past and rebuild his life.
It's a brutal existence, right? I mean, we see him totally isolated from his family, alienated from his fellow prisoners. He's constantly wrestling with guilt and shame. Those excerpts where Sonia writes to his mother and sister describing his condition. It's really tough to read.
Yeah, but even in all that darkness, there are these little glimmers of hope. Sonia's just unwavering love and support. They're a lifeline for him. She actually follows him to Siberia, really symbolizing faith and forgiveness.
She doesn't give up on him. And I think that's ultimately what allows him to start confronting the flaws in his own thinking. Like, he rejects his earlier theories about extraordinary men and starts recognizing just how arrogant and destructive his past was.
He realizes that true redemption, it's not about power or intellectual superiority or any of that. It's about humility, compassion, and taking responsibility for your actions. And that's where this whole idea of suffering being transformative comes in again.
Right. It's not about, glorifying pain or anything like that, but it's about recognizing that facing the consequences of your actions, however difficult it might be, can lead to self-awareness and moral growth.
And that's the brilliance of Dostoevsky's ending. The novel concludes with Raskolnikov still in prison, still wrestling with his past. But there's this sense of hope, this feeling that he's finally on the right path.
Yeah, it's not a neat and tidy resolution, is it?
Not at all. And that's what makes it so powerful. Dostoevsky leaves us with all these lingering questions about the nature of good and evil, justice and punishment, and this whole possibility of redemption. He doesn't offer easy answers, but he invites us to grapple with these complexities ourselves.
And I think that's what makes Crime and Punishment a timeless masterpiece.
Yeah.
It really stays with you long after you finish reading it. It forces you to confront all these uncomfortable truths about yourself and the world around you.
Exactly. It's a story that resonates across generations because it speaks to these universal human struggles that we all face.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what stood out to you the most? Was it Raskolnikov's, psychological torment, Sonia's just unwavering faith, or maybe the broader social commentary that's kind of woven throughout the entire novel?
Yeah, whatever it was, it's clear that Crime and Punishment is a work that it sparks this deep reflection and really invites so many different interpretations.
And that's what we love about these deep dives. Exploring these really rich texts and having these thought-provoking conversations. So a huge thank you to you, our listeners, for providing the excerpts and really sparking this incredible discussion.
And remember, this is just the beginning. We encourage you to keep exploring these themes, keep questioning, keep digging deeper.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow our channel for more insightful explorations of the books and ideas that matter. Until next time.